Welcome to Echoes and Allegories, where literature isn't just read, it's heard, felt, and unraveled. I'm your host, Lily Balcazar, and this is the place where stories speak across time. Each week, we'll dive into books that challenge us, and characters that reflect us, and the ideas that still echo in our culture today. Because behind every line or prose or act of drama, there's a deeper question being asked about society, about power, about who we are and who we pretend to be. In this series, we'll explore how authors use metaphors, symbolism, and narrative to expose the truths we sometimes ignore. From the glittering illusions of the Great Gatsby to the moral crucibles of Salem, we'll unpack the rhetoric, the context, and the criticism that makes literature a mirror and a megaphone. This isn't just about books. It's about the world those books reflect. It's about learning to read critically, to question boldly, and to carry those insights with us beyond the page. So whether you're a student, a lifelong reader, or just someone who's curious about how stories shape societies, you're in the right place. Let's turn the page together. Welcome to Echoes and Allegories. Welcome to Echoes and Allegories, the podcast where literature meets life, and where we unpack the deeper meanings, symbols, and social critiques hidden in our favorite texts. I'm your host, Lily Balcazar, and today's episode is titled Dreams and Trials, a social critique in Gatsby and the Crucible. Joining me is my fellow classmate, James Carpenter. James, it's an honor.
Thank you for having me, Lily. Always a pleasure to dive into great literature, and especially when we're talking Fitzgerald and Miller.
Two giants, right?
Of course.
So let's start by setting the stage. The Great Gatsby, published in 1925, and The Crucible, written in 1953. Two very different stories, but both are razor-sharp critiques of the societies that produce them.
Absolutely. Gatsby gives us this glittering facade of wealth aspiration during the Jazz Age, while underneath Fitzgerald is showing us a moral decay, class stratification, and the empty promise of the American dream. Meanwhile, Miller, The Crucible, though set in 1692 Salem, is a direct response to McCarthyism, a society gripped by paranoia and the destruction of reputations without evidence.
It's fascinating how these authors use such different settings and styles, but end up critiquing very similar issues: corruption, conformity, and the loss of personal integrity.
Exactly. Let's talk technique. Fitzgerald's style is lush and lyrical. He uses symbolism masterfully, the green light and the volley of ashes, and even Gatsby himself. The narrative lens of Nick Carraway adds layers of irony and reflection. The whole book asks us, what are we really chasing and at what cost?
Meanwhile, Miller gives us drama with a capital D. His use of allegories is sharp and unapologetic. Salem stands in for 1950s America. His dialogue is urgent, his conflict is psychological and political. He's showing how fear can override reason and how dangerous it is when truth becomes irrelevant.
And both authors use character brilliantly. Gatsby is a romantic and a fraud, but also deeply human. John Proctor in The Crucible is flawed, but ultimately heroic. They're both trapped by their society's expectations and crushed by them in different ways.
So here's the big question. Why does this matter today? Why should students, readers, and citizens care about these stories?
Because these stories aren't just about the 1920s or the 1600s or the 1950s. They're about now. Fitzgerald and Miller teaches us how to read between the lines of our own world, to spot the illusions we're sold, the systems that demand silence, the moral compromises we're asked to make, and they show how literature gives us tools: rhetorical literacy, critical thinking, and moral imagination.
Beautifully said. I always think of it this way. Literature lets us time travel and soul search, and when we understand how writers shape meaning, we become better at shaping our own. Okay, now I have a few questions for you, James. What do you think is the author's purpose in writing The Crucible?
I think it's to address problems that are going on in modern society and write it in his own way. Because yes, it is, I believe, true on the Salem witch trials, but it also does address problems that we deal with nowadays. So I would say the main reason why the author wrote The Crucible is because to address a problem that's faced in society now.
Right. And our teacher, like he was saying, that The Crucible is sort of critiquing the way people blame their problems on outside forces.
That's good.
And so yeah, that's kind of how it relates to Great Gatsby. So what do you think the author's purpose in writing that book
I think it's also the same where, I won't lie, Gatsby is a hopeless romantic. And, well, he's also addressing problems nowadays because these books that we were written were also to, like, of course they're good literature, but they also address problems or maybe even solutions nowadays that have been made.
Right.
Pours all this money into this one girl, and I don't even think she shows up half the time. So I'm not sure. I don't know if I was supposed to be rooting for Gatsby or not, but
yeah. Well, how do you think they compare to one another?
I think they actually correlate quite well because I wouldn't say they have the same problems, but the similar techniques that was used in the books, I believe the correlation is quite strong between them.
Right. So how are the same basic rhetorical choices in each book used differently in order to achieve this similar purpose we're talking about?
That's a good one. I'm not sure. Well, because I won't lie, the only time I read it wasn't in class, but rhetorical choices, I guess the subtlety that was also used. I guess we could also add like the green light on the dock. Right. That's a good one.
That's imagery that he's using.
Yeah, the imagery was good. Salem was, I'm not sure what Salem was like.
Yeah, I think Salem, they use a lot of metaphors when comparing the 1950s to back in the 1600s, and they use sort of the setting of the trials, of the witch trials, to kind of convey the message and shed light on the problems that they were facing in the 1950s.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's a good way to answer. Absolutely. And in a world where truth often feels negotiable, that's a skill we all need.
Couldn't agree more. James, thank you for joining us and for reminding us how powerful stories can speak across time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lily.
That's it for today on Echoes and Allegories. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And remember, behind every text is a world waiting to understand. Until next time, keep reading between the lines. And that's a wrap on today's chapter of Echoes and Allegories. Whether we've traveled through the gilded streets of West Egg or stood beneath the gallows of Salem, the stories we've explored remind us literature doesn't just tell us who we were, it asks who we were becoming. If today's episode gave you something to think about, share it with someone who loves a good story and a great conversation. And if you're feeling inspired, leave us a review. It helps more listeners find our literary corner of the world. Next time, we'll be turning another page, diving into the symbolism, the context, and the culture that shaped the stories we think we know. Until then, keep questioning, keep reading, and above all else, keep listening for the echoes. I'm Lily Balcazar. Thank you for joining me. The Great Gatsby. Blah blah blah. Echoes and Allegories podcast.
Move the lamp like right here.
Welcome to Echoes and Allegories.
PMO. No, because then they're gonna see this.
Okay. Sit. Shut up.
Oh, yeah.
The stage. The Great Gatsby. So your turn. The stage. The Great Gatsby.
That's what I'm saying. Like, bro, it ain't that crazy. I don't know. I feel like it should be a little higher.